Hello. It's all this way. Okay. Does everyone find see it's confusing for the working group event? Because previously we had a old one, and now we are creating a new one. I don't know if you are seeing like 2 events in on your calendar or just this one.
I'm seeing only one.
I see only one. Okay.
Let me double check. Actually, I see a few at different meeting rooms. They all the same title. I see 3 actually. Security group, but a different meeting room.
Yeah, the old one is still there.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Maybe you can delete it.
Let me post this under.
Maybe I can delete it myself.
You can delete it yourself. Yes.
Remove this
Let me
all events.
This.
Okay.
Okay. Share my screen.
Okay. I have deleted all of them.
That. Okay. So let's start with the design review. We have several items here. Me first open this one. Hello. Hey, that's good. Yeah.
So
relevant people here. Did
we?
we talk about this doc in their environment working
That's
group?
networking next week.
Okay.
Last week.
Networking. Okay.
Oh, we briefly talked last week, yeah. And,
Yeah.
and we
You were there.
going to talk here and then probably you'll see on Friday.
So this one is related to their requirement from their OS company. So
Yes.
but
obviously we need to make sure that they work in a way that is compatible with
That
this
whole
one.
thing you always.
Yeah, I
This
heard
stuff.
that
It's
too.
called Verizon Digital.
right. Yes. Did you review guys from OS? Did you review this doc already?
Yeah, so we reviewed it. It's also good for someone to walk us through quickly, and then what's the thought process on that one.
Yeah, I can give you the very short version. So the fundamental thing compared with what we talked 2 weeks ago was the fact that you are using DNS-based certificates for the legacy clients.
Can we confirm that it's the case for them?
I asked and I confirmed last time, unless something changed.
I remember you put the SPV stand in the.
So we have actually in our certificates, and when there are external clients that are connecting, the validation that would be done is based on the DNS.
Okay, so you have both.
Yes, and one thing that is clear, I understand you are using a custom CA or custom way to generate those certificates, but Istio doesn't have that and we cannot rely on it. So the proposal is basically to, for people who are obviously not using their own CAs, is to continue to use Citadel to generate the SPIFFE certificates and use some DNS-based certificates, either existing certificates that have them in case of migration or cert manager, ACME, or whatever else they need to generate the DNS certificates. Because in the end, the requirement is that the server presents a DNS-based certificates to an external client that is not aware of secure naming. Do we have agreement on this? Is there any possibility to do it differently than with a DNS-based certificate?
I think that the requirement is close to that, but not exactly that.
Yeah.
It's that customers are able to provide their own certificates,
Yes.
not necessarily that they're DNS. Like this proposal doesn't really care what's in the certificate that it's presenting, right? It just is something that the customer decides what they want to put in it.
That's a bit, but my point was that the requirement, as I understand, is that you have a legacy client that is not running Istio. So it can be something running on a mainframe that doesn't run Linux, and it's attempting to do an HTTPS connection to a Istio workload. And as far as I know, most existing HTTPS clients expect a DNS-based certificate on the other end. Yes, you could put arbitrary things.
So, but what if we integrate with the Spire servers certificates? Then it will be a SPIFFE certificate, and it won't have the ALPN like Istio.
But
then,
so it just.
That, I'm not sure what is the problem. The requirement here is to have legacy clients. That's what I'm trying to solve. Legacy clients.
It could be legacy client, right? I'm sure if you say legacy client, it is more about client outside the service mesh, right? Yeah. And that could, it's not like, even if it's a new client, right? The certificate which they are presenting, which they are listening, which is going to pass, it will have SPIFFE. Because our system CA does provides the certificate with SPIFFE.
I'm not talking about client authentication. I'm talking about server. What clients the server provides. That's the scope of this proposal.
Right. Even in the server side, right? And what's the differentiating factor now? It's like any custom certificate provided by anyone, okay, which has SPIFFE as well as DNS. It should just work, right?
Yes.
I'm still missing the point of why it has to be DNS based. Why there is the legacy client need to be SPIFFE or not supporting SPIFFE. I'm still confused in that way.
Okay, so the idea is that legacy client
and also, sorry to interrupt, like if I read through this one, there was a like proposal of, hey, using Kubernetes secret for you to provide a certificate. I'm not sure where is that coming from.
Yeah. So it's possible that you guys probably will integrate with SDS in the future, and we should allow that possibility.
So for a normal Istio user that runs Citadel, how are they going to provide certificates for the external clients?
What do you mean?
So you have an external client that doesn't know about Istio identity, and it expects a DNS-based. You are using a DNS-based certificate right now, yes?
Right.
That means that your client is expecting a DNS-based certificate. How would a Istio user provision this certificate to Istio? How would you configure a sidecar to load the DNS-based certificate?
Okay, so let's understand what we are trying to do. You want to explain? Like, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I actually kind of understand their point of view. So their point of view is just that if it's an external client and it cannot get a certificate provided by Citadel, then the usual method of validation is using DNS-based.
Right.
So then in the current approach, there is no other, like, unless there is a client that understands SPIFFE and would be able to understand that this server would have this format of a SPIFFE certificate, which would be difficult to provide to external clients, because right now it happens through secure naming for within the method.
It is not only the understanding the format, it's also understanding this service account is mapped to this service name.
Yeah.
In your environment, do you have like an ingress gateway? If so, then the TLS can be terminated at the ingress, right? And then the client just configures the authentication for the ingress.
That's not what they want.
Ingress gateway is not a solution.
Yeah,
we've discussed that already. Yeah.
So the traffic is directly from client to the workload.
Yeah. So yeah, Ingress gateway doesn't support stateful sets. There are a lot of missing things that in Ingress gateway.
So if the traffic is directly from client to the workload, is it possible just to configure the client CA pool bundle to contain the Citadel root certificate?
That's possible, but the client cannot authenticate the workload because it doesn't know. The client, first of all, will not understand the SPIFFE certificate because most clients do not. And second, it will not know what to expect because you present a service account and namespace, while the service is actually a DNS name. It's not, the client doesn't know service hook info. It's actually served by service account default. Service account is blocked.
So the client want to do the secure naming in that case.
Client want to have a secure connection. Doesn't necessarily want, it cannot do secure name, Istio secure naming. It is doing the DNS secure naming, which means you ask for www.google.com, you get the certificate with www.google.com in the certificate.
Jeffrey, you want to say
Yeah, I
something?
will say something like
Go ahead.
just trying to understand from your guys' perspective that the original problem you're trying to solve, and when you got blocked by our API limitation, is that because you have client does not have the envoy sidecar, and your server has the permissive mode that's not matching on the transport product TLS, and you are not like coming from a certificate format kind of motivated from there. So that's why I think for a API to be more straightforward, the configuration should directly express your intent. That can avoid the confusion better. That's why I think and some annotation on the workload, deployment of pod, so on and so forth, to indicate your intention is to let the envoy sidecar on the server side to terminate the TLS connection will be clearer to express your original intent, rather than conflating another fact that it's often used. I agree that it's often used together with the DNS certificate in your client, but they are very overlapped, but they are not exactly the same thing. That's my perspective.
That's true, and from a general networking perspective, the general problem is how do we configure a sidecar to present different certificates to different clients? Maybe they're not DNS, maybe they're different. That's a general, we do it in Ingress, for example, where based on SNI, we present a different certificate and we do different routing.
I think there is two problems. Using different certificates is one problem, and our API is unable to terminate the server-side TLS and the envoy is another problem. I think the original proposal tried to solve the TLS termination problem, not trying to solve the certificate problem. If we can solve things one thing at a time, that will be better.
How can you solve TLS termination without presenting a certificate that the client understands?
We have a certificate. They have a certificate. And they cannot use CLS certificate for some reason.
How can they validate? That's a problem.
Sure.
They list both a SPIFFE and a DNS SAN on the certificate. Like
yes.
their problem isn't generating certificates that are useful in their infrastructure. Their problem is accepting different ALPNs.
Right.
And that's easy to solve. So as soon as we know that a server has a certificate that has DNS or multiple things, it's very easy from pilot perspective to generate the second. So that part I think we have consensus on. So we have, I think, there is no objection to pilot based on some information from sidecar to generate the extra chain, extra filter, and to present a specific certificate if Istio is not in the name. That's agreed.
Where we got hung up, Kostin, was what specifically that API should look like. Where does Pilot get that information to generate this thing? I think you're right that we're in agreement that Pilot should do this.
Okay,
but it was the API that was.
And that's not necessarily an API, because the real information about generating or not generating things doesn't necessarily need an API that user needs to worry about. It's actually driven by the actual sidecar by having a certificate that has this capability. So if you do not have a certificate, an additional certificate, or you have a standard certificate, obviously there is no point of putting the extra filter. So we don't need to increase user complexity and user requirements when we can do this automatically. We know that the workload has a second DNS certificate or have a certificate with two SANs in it.
So we are debating about the usability and the intent. Maybe you guys can comment on what do you guys think, which is better to express, say, your intent and more straightforward to use?
So we have one concern with adding it as a secret name, because currently the way we are actually mounting the certificate is not through a secret. We kind of act as if we are the Citadel agent. So we have our own agent, which just puts the certificates in the right location within the Istio proxy container. And
I think we can that's perfectly reasonable too. We can as long as we agree that the sidecar, the actual envoy, the server envoy, by some means will determine that it's in this use case where it needs to generate two certificates. Even if they're mounted, I mean, I'm fine with specifying as an option that it's actually bundled with the Istio default certificate, or it's a separate certificate. The reason I specified it this way was many users of Istio do not have the capability to generate this. So to be a generic solution for all Istio users, we need to try to give them a way to mount a different certificate, because Citadel does not and cannot generate DNS-based certificates because, again, cannot verify DNS membership.
Yeah, I mean, that's all my other concern is, like, we don't encourage using Kubernetes at all. Okay.
That's fine as well. The intent here, I understand. The intent is to somehow specify in the sidecar that you have a special certificate that needs to be presented, which is not the typical one, and to give other users of Istio a way to use it without replacing Citadel, because what we ship is Citadel. Citadel doesn't validate DNS, so we need something.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, right? If that's the case, like, hey, I mean, wherever we add an annotation, that annotation sees that we can have two locations. Like, hey, the location one is like, which is the Citadel default location, and there's another location which where we can put our identity, or the agent which we run, we can put our certificate in both the locations. It's not an issue. Same certificate. Okay. We can put it in both the location. Right?
So I modified the proposal. To make it, to take into account the fact that the certificate could be. So you may not use Citadel, and if you don't use Citadel, you will indicate somehow that actually the certificate is whatever it is. Okay.
So that means their pilot agent can take a parameter to specify the path of their certificate. Is that?
That means that for most users, they will still need to use a secret to mount the certificates. But if they use a different CAs than Citadel, will give them a way to specify that, hey, this certificate is a special certificate that can be used without Istio.
Okay.
And then they don't have to use secrets at all. That's perfectly reasonable. The main point of the proposal is to ask for pilot agent, and envoy to detect if they're in a situation where they can talk with legacy clients or not. How? It's perfectly flexible, but again, it needs to be the agent. It cannot be something that is not aware of what is the environment of the agent.
So I'm having back to the question. Like, I understand the small point. We can just say that, hey, with the pilot agent, we give a parameter where you can look for, right, and then for that particular certificate. Right. Now, in terms of options for us to say that, hey, this is one is going to, you need to create two filter chain. One filter chain with Istio as an LPN, another one is a default one. Where is that driving come from?
Oh, that's the easy part. So whenever the pilot agent, whenever the envoy connects to pilot, it's sending a map, a key value pair map, which is generated from the environment of the pilot. So anything, all the labels, all annotations, and all environment variables starting with a particular prefix, they're all sent to pilot. So if an agent sends an extra parameter saying take two chains or whatever parameter we define, the pilot will be able to look up in the metadata, define this parameter, and then generate whatever is necessary.
Okay.
But just point out that the pilots with this information still need to consult the authentication policy before making this decision. Because if you are in strict mode, there's no sense for you to configure two filter chain.
Of course it is, because in this case, even in strict mode, you will not have the plain text, but you have two filter chain, one matching strict for pilot to pilot, and the other one matching TLS, because the TLS clients present a valid certificate. So the legacy clients present a SPIFFE certificate, and they are strict. I mean, there is no unstrict.
Sure. You need to have two filter chain, but I'm saying that you need to consult the policy.
That's fine. That's reasonable.
I think it's just two ports, right? One is for between the workload sidecar. Another is from the client directly to the sidecar.
No, they need to use the same port because.
Same port. Okay.
Well, why not? It's very complicated with additional ports. They're not matching or anything. It's complicated to implement.
Yeah, it selects on the ALPN, not on port.
Yeah. We want to, and we have an LPN anyway, so it's not.
So, but Custon, is the logic here that like anytime you have the second certificate configured, you set up the ALPN for like H2 and H11?
Yeah. Why not? I mean,
well, I'm asking, right? Is that always what people are going to want to do, or are we going to get into situations where people are going to want to like be more explicit about, well, okay, I want this ALPN to match this certificate and this other ALPN to match this other certificate?
That's a very good question, and in Gateway we do have this flexibility. and we can add it as well for sidecars. But right now we don't have any user who asked for it. If the user asks for it, we can. I mean, we have ability to configure based on SNI name, based on LPN, based on a lot of other things. That's valid requirement, but it's not currently priority. I mean, that's. For example, there is a separate discussion about adding the hash of the public keys to gateway. There is
right, exactly. But my
that's
I guess
reasonable.
But like the ask is sort of to be able to adjust this ALPN stuff.
Yes.
Not to be able to provide 2 certificates because they're only providing 1. So well, like, is it the right move to say what we're going to do is allow you to provide 2 certificates, and it so happens that when you provide the second certificate, it's going to be the ALPN that these users want. Like, is that really the common use case that we think is going to be?
I think the common use case will be people having existing workloads. So you are a user who doesn't use Istio, you use TLS, but you don't use Istio, and you want to adopt Istio. In this case, you already have an infrastructure that has certificates, and you want that infrastructure to keep working without dropping TLS. So when you add Istio, you suddenly lose ability this stops working, because when you add Istio in permissive mode, all the non-Istio clients will break. And I think this is a very common use case. I mean, people upgrading from a TLS environment to Istio is super common. And those users have existing certificates in place. Those users already have an infrastructure, so they already have certificates.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but like, is it the use case that we should interpret a second certificate as being I guess, what is it? Any ALPN other than Istio, or just H1, H2? Like, what exactly are we going to configure these listener chains to be? Like, what is the business logic there about going from input of 2 certificates to the filter chains?
That's something probably we need to discuss as a general problem. I mean, how much flexibility do we need in the sidecar? In terms of TLS configuration, and maybe you are right. Maybe we need to replicate the gateway config in sidecar and configure it that way. I'm not
because like if we solved that problem, we wouldn't even need to mess around with this 2 certificates thing, and the people at Oath would be able to move forward.
I think again, my concern is that what they are doing with the CA, I mean, using non-Citadel that generates those mixed certificates, is extremely uncommon. The common case is you have an existing infrastructure with existing certificates you want to integrate with Istio. I don't know what CAs they are using that generate this kind of Frankenstein certificates, but
I mean, do you have other users or customers in mind for this use case that you are proposing?
Everyone who is upgrading from a TLS based infrastructure to Istio has this exact same problem. So people who have TLS existing communication in their clusters and add Istio, that's what they hit.
Can I propose thinking other than current proposals there? What other alternatives could be? For example, can we say we just put the annotation, allow customers to put annotations on their deployment YAML, and then based on that information, pattern making decision right away without even need to look at the certificate.
But then how would they present a certificate? Somehow they need to present a certificate.
They are already being able to.
How? I mean,
mount the
how?
Mount the I don't know how, but I don't heard that it's become a problem.
But it is a problem because again, they are not using Citadel. Istio user is Citadel.
I think. Can you guys confirm with that? I think you guys put the key cert in the same path as Istio does /etc/source. I don't know how you do that, but it doesn't seem to be a problem for you guys. But right.
Right. I mean, we are basically replacing Citadel search, so we just place it at the same file path and we don't use Citadel.
I know.
Yeah. So,
but Istio users do not have this. That stuff is not open source. It's not something we ship. We need a solution for Istio users in general. We cannot ship a solution just for them. And for people who use.
I mean, they can do this. Other people can do that as well. Why not?
because we don't ship a solution. We cannot tell out of box, hey, that's what you do. I mean,
Don't ship a solution.
so Citadel doesn't generate this kind of thing. Istio, when you install Istio, you don't have this kind of certificates.
So I don't not quite understand that the things that you also they do, why not other people cannot do. They turn off the Citadel and they put the certificate in the right path. And it's not my first time hearing people are doing that actually. Other people can do that as well. And then all they need is to terminate the envoy, it's like TS connection at the server's envoy. They just put that intent in the deployment annotation. And that's it, envoy, the part of the logic would be very simple.
So if we want to require people to stop using Citadel in order to upgrade from TLS to Istio, then we can solve the problem in different ways. I mean, the fundamental issue, I think, is certificate configuration. How do you provision the certificates? If we are saying that in order to move from a TLS-based deployment to Istio is to not adopt Citadel but use your own certificate, I'm perfectly happy with that. They could keep their own DNS-based certificates and modify it. That's fine. In this case, we can just probe the certificate. If the certificate has a DNS-based SAN, then we tell pilot to generate the config. No extra annotation, no nothing. So basically, pilot agent starts, it watches the certificates, parses the certificate, see a DNS-based entry, say, pilot, please generate DNS. Will it work for you?
Yeah. No, that would definitely work, and that's also makes our life a little bit simpler, right?
Actually, that's good. It's kind of the same idea.
Sorry, could someone
so the idea is pilot agent,
right.
Startup, checks if the mounted secret has a DNS SAN. It's watching the file, is reading the file, parse, look at SANs. If it sees a DNS SAN, then it enables this. It tells pilot to metadata to enable this mode.
I think it's their original idea, right? No?
No, that's not necessarily.
So, I mean, this sort of sounds all right in principle, and we've already spent half an hour on this issue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Kostin, can you update the design to actually include that sort of detailed logic? Like,
yeah, I can definitely do that. But I want to make clear that that's the direction security working group is going to say people don't use Citadel, use your own infrastructure and to generate certificates that are DNS and SPIFFE.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with that. I just want to make sure that this is the direction we want to recommend people.
No, I don't think that we're saying that we want to recommend
That's what
it.
you're saying, to not use Citadel, but for people who upgrade from TLS-based deployments, TLS-based clusters to Istio, they will not use Citadel, but have a different infrastructure that generates a mixed certificate. Like,
no, I thought that.
Wait.
I thought I was agreeing to the principle that like you would provide not two different certificates, but you would provide, there would be like the place that Citadel puts its certificate and then a second location in the container that pilot agent looks for certificates.
Yeah, that was the original proposal.
Right. So I'm sort of fine with that, but I want to know what's the detailed logic between like what does Citadel agent like detect about this certificate? What does it send to pilot? How does pilot decide what?
I can put this. That's easy. I mean, I can add. I mean, that's what it's pretty obvious. But I'll add the exact test. No, but the proposal now, I mean, what they are saying right now is that instead of that, we are going to say you are not going to use Citadel. You are going to use a CA, a different infrastructure that provision certificates that are both SPIFFE and DNS at the same time. And then my proposal is no longer applies. Instead of creating two secrets, you are going to replace Citadel with something else that generates this kind of certificates. Because I don't think Citadel can generate DNS-based certificates because it doesn't have information to validate DNS. So it needs ACME or it needs some form of validation for DNS.
I don't agree with that approach.
That's your proposal, I mean, not mine. That's
not necessarily my proposal.
Yeah, I don't think we should be going down.
We shouldn't go that way.
Yeah.
We shouldn't go that way. Yeah.
So I think if the user this final valid proposal, that's fine.
I don't know. I'm happy either way.
So I think this alternative of use the customer's own CA to provision the SPIFFE ID and the DNS certificate basically shift the responsibility to customers. They needed to authenticate, whether this certificate should be provisioned or denied. They needed to authenticate the JWT token. They needed essentially Kubernetes service account. The Kubernetes service account doesn't have the DNS name.
We want to support that, but we should also support having two secrets. One is using their CLL, the other is using their own CA as their transient stage, and then gradually let them shift to CLL.
I think that's the right approach because again, that's the most common use case. You already have a DNS certificate and you want to adopt Istio, so you will have two certificates.
All right. So like if that's is that what you guys, the users is happy with, and because you don't mind introducing more complexity in pilot, then sure.
There is no extra complexity. Pilot is, anything that is using metadata is very easy to do in pilot.
All right, I will write this down. I think this one also meets the requirements from the OS team. I think we can still support them, right?
Yeah, we can support them. I'll adjust to put some extra, probably I'll put an annotation to indicate that you're using the original secret or something.
Right.
You can also
they are using single secret. Yeah.
Okay. And I also like once you, as Curtis was mentioning, if you update the design document, okay, we don't need to wait for another meeting for 15 days.
Yeah.
If you want to catch up, I'm very much happy to, after you're done, we can have a short meeting with few of us and then go through that and find.
But there is details. Right now, you overwrite the certificate under the ETC certs, right? But in this proposal, this new proposal, there will be two certificates under different paths.
Just a proposal to take into account that you could either have two, or you could have ETC certs used for both.
Yeah.
Or just one cert.
Both options will be available.
Okay, both
solutions will be available. Yeah.
Can you add a comment with how you name the extra certificate or the, because you have two certificates in the same, or you have two SANs?
We have just a DNS SAN and a DNS URI.
In a single certificate. Sorry. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'll add another option to take this into account. That's reasonable. And by the way, for SDS adoptions, that's kind of the same thing we are doing for gradual adoption. Is pilot agent detects that you have SDS as a token, and tells pilot, and then pilot generates an SDS configuration for the envoy.
Yeah, I think that's their approach, right?
It's a general approach that we are using for a lot of things where we detect. There is another option to use a custom path instead of ETC certs. There are many other things that the agent, it tells pilot to adjust the configuration based on the environment. Okay, sorry for taking
all right, thanks.
That makes sense. That my only point is like, with all the comments back and forth, if you could update the document, okay, and are we targeting this for 1.3?
I think it's simple enough to do it in 1.3.
Okay, sounds good. One thing is like, if you want to go one more review and get our input again after you update it, I'm very much happy to have offline meeting with few of us. Okay.
Do you have a PR already? Do you have a PR for adding the extra certificate already?
Are you willing to make contribution for sending a PR, or who will do the job work?
Yeah, you're saying like it's going to ship in 1.3, but we haven't figured out who's going
it's
to
a very
do the
simple
job.
change that can ship in 1.3 if in the next 2 weeks someone sends a small PR. It's probably around 20 lines of code in one file.
We will make it work.
The question is, we need someone to do the work.
Yeah.
In the original proposal, who was supposed to do the work?
We are open to like contributing, so we can try to take a stab at it and try to get it done in the next 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, if you need help, I mean, I can give you some prototype, but it's a long time to, I'm quite busy.
Yeah.
I can write some example or something to give you, including the document, what exactly needs to be changed if you want. But
all right.
I want someone to own it. That is not me.
So Costin, you will lead the OS team,
Yeah.
I think, to do the implementation.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you very
Well,
much.
to just be clear, yeah, Costin will not be primary. He would give advice.
Yeah, he will give
Yeah,
advice. I think OS team will.
Consult,
basically.
consult.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not the leading.
Yeah. The one thing is like, I'm open to do the contribution. All we need is like, we agree upon some proposal and we need that guidance so that we can go ahead and do this one, right? And this will be a common use cases for people who want to bring their custom CA. I want this to be right so that it's adaptable for other customers too.
Yeah. I think we pretty much agreed. Is anyone disagreeing with the solution?
I don't disagree. Anyway.
Okay, let's do it. Ping me and I'll do the documents and like what exactly needs to be changed.
All right, let's get it. Yeah, start
Okay.
work.
Get things moving forward.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank
Thank you. Yeah. Let's move to the next one. The trust domain isolation by default. So I'll give you a brief idea about what this is. The background is by default currently in Istio, if a user doesn't specify auth policies for their services, if your clusters or your trust domains have suppose you have different trust domains, right? Different meshes, and you have cross mesh calls. Then those meshes, they can share the same root. Suppose they are sharing the same root. One client from one mesh is able to call the service in another mesh, and the service, if it doesn't apply authorization policy correctly, it will take that request and just authenticate it. This is the default behavior, and we had internal discussions about this, and we think it's security risk from the domain isolation perspective. So we want to enforce some trust domain isolation by applying applying a special policy on the authentication filters by default. So what this proposal is doing is we try to have a check on the authentication filter, which is by default on, and it's going to check the request certificate, check the trust domain in the certificate. If that trust domain is the same as the local trust domain, then we will authenticate it and let it go through. Otherwise, we will just deny it, meaning it's coming from an untrusted trust domain, even though you are able to verify the certificate because you are maybe sharing a common root. But we give the users a way to disable that if they want to enable the cross-mesh calls. It's a flag. The user can just specify a flag, and then this check will be turned off. And you can use authorization policies to do better fine-grained authorization based on their trust domains. That's the idea.
Question, sorry, for me to understand. So how do you communicate the trust domain? Is it the cluster name? What is it?
The trust domain is in their certificate, and how to configure it is through the helm.
It can be spoofed then.
Can be spoofed.
How do you communicate?
When you are deploying the cluster.
Yeah. Okay. So you
it's
trust,
specified in their.
Okay. So you trust. Okay. You
yeah.
trust the other domain.
You trust the deployment steps.
So how do you trust the public key? How do you know the public key of the other cluster?
We're not talking about actually
root,
doing federation right now. We're talking about shutting down other external trust domains.
Yeah, but we just want to by default not allow traffic from other trust domains to call in. But you can turn it on if you at some time you want to open the gate to other meshes.
What is wrong with the current policy? If you have a valid certificate, let it through. I mean, valid meaning that it has same root CA.
Sorry, what's the
same root?
So basically, the use case is you have a root CA that is generating certificates for a lot of meshes,
yeah.
Yep.
and some of them may not trust each other. I see. Okay.
That's the use case.
Okay.
But if we're saying that we're looking at the root CA to figure out the trust domain, like how can you generate certificates in more than one trust domain if the root CA?
The root CA can generate any.
So the
Certificate
SPIFFE spec
finding.
doesn't dictate about the cardinality mapping between the root and the trusted domain. It's not violating the SPIFFE spec if you are using the same root to generate multiple trust domain.
Right. If it's true, then we can't just look at the root certificate to figure out the trust domain. We have
That's
to
correct.
explicitly.
That's the proposal.
That's right.
That's exactly the problem this proposal is trying to address.
No, like the thing on the screen says Envoy uses the trust domain in its own X509 certificate as the local trust domain. I'm saying you can't do that. You have to have it explicitly configured.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes and yes. So you have this custom domain configured in the Helm installation part, and by default it's custom local, and customer can configure something else. And the user configure is.
Oh, this local trust domain, I don't think it's clustered or local. This trust domain is just the trust domain that is used by this mesh.
One thing I want to coming from the environment working group where we discuss exactly the same thing. I don't think we have a clear agreement in the environment working group about how federation will look like, how multi-cluster will be configured, and all the other stuff. So I suspect plans for 1.3 may be too aggressive, given that
this
we
is
do not have
any
agreement or consensus about even
But
federation.
it's the other way around, right? Yeah. Like
this is isolation.
They're trying to
I'm trying to isolate. I'm not trying to federate.
But this naturally belongs to authentication policy, right? This proposal is on authentication policy, right?
So in general, how multiple clusters are going to talk with each other and authenticate with each other, how be configured, is a subject of a lot of debates. I mean, operator is involved, and there are a lot of things that are not yet clear, and you are one step further from what we are not agreeing on.
I think it's either at the authentication policy or auth policy. It's not authorized. Another identity from another cluster is not authorized for certain service. Then it's rejected. It's either way, I think.
Maybe.
It looks like what they're describing is that some users already are doing some kind of.
I know, and that's fine, but codifying on an API before we, we just blocked all the work on operator and because we don't know.
I understand your point. I'm just trying to clarify what is discussed here. Like in the environment meeting before, we are talking about federation, and federation is not a solved problem at all. And what you are addressing right now, it looks like it's users that are actually attempting at doing federation before we actually have a pattern to do that.
Yes, I agree.
I see what you mean.
But you're trying to solve a problem that is not officially supported. That's what I'm saying. I'm clarifying that.
But the identity and the auth, I think they are orthogonal. Right? People can present you with a certificate with all kinds of identity.
Not in Istio, not in what we support in Istio. So the what we support in Istio test and release and have alpha quality is what is currently installable and supported by.
So the only risk here, I mean, I don't think it's a blocker for your proposal. The only risk here is your proposal is going to land very like it would be adjacent to something that will be very different from that in production. Like
and the concern is the only consensus we had in environments was to not jump to any API until we have an agreement, and because any API we create will likely need to be changed and create.
That's fine. Yeah.
To the users.
API level, I totally agree. Yes, but this one is
1.4. I can understand it. Maybe for 1.4 is reasonable, but for 1.3 seems.
So this is not an API. This is just a default behavior, right?
So the trust domain, you want to configure it per citadel, basically?
If it's default behavior, I think it's probably okay. I don't.
Yeah, it's a default behavior, right?
If it's a default behavior, I can.
What is the default behavior?
Default behavior is not to authenticate any requests coming from a different trust domain. Yes.
So how do we know what is a different trust domain and what is a local trust domain?
By the SPIFFE, the first part in SPIFFE is done.
You suppose you don't configure like cluster.local. That's that dumb trust domain in your certificate. You configure something meaningful there, and then you figure out, okay, there's another identity trust domain different from mine.
Now,
But I thought we just got finished with the discussion that you can't just look at the root certificate to find out what the local trust domain is.
You look at the
you look at the leaf certificates. The actual certificate you're authenticating has a service account, namespace, and trust domain. Right now, we ignore the trust domain for some reason.
Sure, but how are we, like, our Istio is generating the certificates, right? We, like, you can't just like say that we're going to look at them because that's totally circular, right? Istio is generating it in the first place. How does it know what the trust domain is on the certificate that it's writing?
So first of all, you need to have the same private key and same root CA. So the same root CA will generate all certificates. So if you have a root CA that is generating certificates, you can control that root CA to generate the trust domains however you want. And you can make sure that a trust domain corresponds to whatever boundary you want to enforce.
That's a very abstract answer. I mean, like, literally, when I stand up Istio today, what goes in the certificate? What trust domain goes in the certificate?
Whatever you put in values.yaml.
Okay.
And
So
you create a second
values.yaml sets the local trust domain.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you set a second cluster, you put same value. Still fine because they are different root CAs.
Right.
Now you decide that two clusters can talk to each other. In this case, you will make sure that you merge the CAs either by concatenating the public keys or change one of the root CAs to be the same.
Yeah. No, I'm fine now. I mean, it's just like this proposal says we're going to look at the certificate or we're going to use a flag, and no, we're not going to do that. We're going to look at values.yaml.
Yeah.
That's the local trust domain.
Oh, not a certificate.
Yeah.
Values.yaml is where we get the local trust domain.
Absolutely.
Not a root.
Okay.
We're going to look
I
at
hope so.
We need to
because
change this plan.
We're going to
say
only look
that.
at the sign field in the certificate. Okay. Oh, this one is finished. Next one is about the bug. I think I don't have quite well understanding about this, but if someone, I think, Kostin, you give comments there.
Shriram and I commented on this one. It's basically extending. We have in Gateway, we specify all kind of things about TLS. And there is one setting in Envoy that we don't support, and the proposal is to add that setting, really, what it boils down to. So I think the feedback from both me and Shriram is to break this PR into two different PRs.
Okay.
You can scroll a bit down. Because down. Okay. So the field that we are talking about is verify certificate SPKI, which is one of the options that Envoy supports. And the feedback was to move this field next to the list of SANs we validate and the TLS version support. And so we have a lot of other options that will go next to the other options that are related.
Jimmy, do you have any? Have you looked at this?
Yeah, both me and Shriram, I think we agree on this one. I mean, there is no concern about the default validate SPKI. About the trust CA, that's a different story, and I think that needs to be moved to the, again, same discussion with the environments and with how we are going to deal with multi-cluster and multiple root of trust.
Question though, so this changing gateway protocol, and you mentioned about the SDS. Just want to understand what certificate, or it's about ingress certificate, or it is about
It's about ingress.
It's about the ingress.
Okay.
Ingress gateway. Ingress gateway can do MTLS.
Yeah, right.
In MTLS, you can specify what SANs you expect from the client to present. But you can also specify that you want the SHA of the public key or the SHA of the
certificate that the client is using
to be verified. So you can specify either SAN, SHA, or SHA.
Right.
Okay.
Those other two options were present in Envoy or missing in the gateway.
Missing the gateway, yes.
So the whole thing is to add them. That part is not controversial. It's easy, just wrong place. I mean, it's not
so So the conclusion is to split this into two parts?
No. The PR was putting it in another message deep inside. So the feedback was to put it next to the others because we have a list of SANs that we support. We have a list of other things, and it belongs there. It's just in the wrong place.
Someone is about the interface of API.
The API.
Change.
Yeah.
It's the API change.
They want to support that.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to support it. The valid option is supported by Envoy. There is no problem with that.
Okay.
The problem is trusted CA, specifying the trusted CA. That's the part where we want to postpone until we have a clear understanding about how having a different trusted CA will be configured in environments, operator, multi-cluster, and so forth.
One of the suggestions was to make one of the trusted CAs into a separate field, like a trusted CA credential name under the credential name field. One of the other PRs was to make the credential name split out into from a single opaque secret into a TLS secret and a one with a known suffix.
Sure, but I think that was the point to decouple the PR, and it's not clear yet if this is ready for API to become an API. I mean, we can add an option that install time for the ingress gateway to load stuff, but it's not necessarily something that we want to put in gateway.
Is this validating the downstream peer or the upstream peer from the gateway?
Downstream.
Downstream, the browser client.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm still like, it feels like this is very similar to the kind of discussions we were having last meeting around what kind of config goes where, right? Because we already have authentication policy, which is supposed to be about how you validate clients that are connecting.
I think this one is for gateway is okay, even though I'm thinking for the first one, because like gateway facing public internet clients, and it's very complicated for outside the mesh, and we can optimize the user experience by authentication policy for within the mesh, but this one.
So I know that's the discussions that we keep having, and that's for TOC to decide. Right now, for this particular PR, we have all the other options for TLS configuration in gateway. It wouldn't make sense to put this validated SPKI in a different one. So, I mean, we are not planning to deprecate all the TLS handling in gateway, and I don't think we can split some fields in one API. For sidecar, we'll probably continue to have this discussion until the TOC steps in and resolves the problem. But for gateway, I hope we can avoid the discussions.
I mean, are we in a position now where authentication policy only applies to sidecars?
Right now, yes. Well, the current API we ship in 1.2 has all the client authentication configuration for gateways specified as a gateway resource. There is no TLS. There is not the authentication policy is not used. Ignored. The authentication policy is used only to define strict versus permissive. No other TLS settings, nothing else. Gateway has all the other TLS settings that we
Wait, but strict versus permissive that applies to gateways as well?
No. Gateways don't have gateway have full flexibility. You can configure LPN, you can configure SNI, you can configure whatever you want, and you can specify exactly what you want. There is no concept of permissive in gateway. You could create a pass-through TCP filter explicitly. You can validate arbitrary sounds. You can validate by
Yeah, no, sorry. You're given way too much detail. My question is, does authentication policy affect gateways at all, ever?
No.
What if you define an authentication policy with
It's ignored.
We are ignore that.
It's ignored because, again, gateway doesn't have any fields that would apply it. The gateway is explicitly configured based on the content of the gateway. There is nothing in gateway receiving traffic.
And does gateway, like, do any of the settings affect validation of client certificates today?
Yes. Okay. We specify what SANs we expect, which can be DNS, PFI, or whatever.
Then yeah, I mean, I guess this feels like it's not any different than what we already have.
Look at the gateway documentation. It's pretty.
So large. This is just a plus beyond like verifying the SAN. You also specify the trusted CA and specify the SPKI. Those things.
Verify the SPKI. Yes, the trusted CA again is something that is probably left for a separate discussion because it relates with the operator and the cluster, or how we.
And you want to decouple it in which way?
This PR should add the second option, the verify SPKI, which is clear. And the separate PR will discuss. First of all,
this one.
It's not clear it needs to be an API and gateway. It can be just a configuration option in values.yaml when we install the gateway because it involves mounts, involves other things. It's not something that So in order to load the
Okay.
trusted CA from a file, the deployment, the
I see.
installer will need to mount that file in
Right.
either as a secret or as a
Uh-huh.
config map. So that's not something that pilot can control. So in the end, anyway, separate discussion, separate document about.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Chris?
Yeah, especially in the values.yaml, since for at least our case, these aren't going to be changing that much.
Exactly.
And especially when I propose this as a sort of a default list of trusted ones, I think SDS already allows you to inject the secret with the custom ones.
But we don't require people to. SDS is an alpha feature that is not enabled by, we have other options as well.
Right, and the file-based mount options in the gateway also support.
But wait, the SDS for gateway is pretty stable.
It's pretty stable, but it's not required. It's not the only option. I mean, we do support, whatever options we support in the API should work with SDS, should work without SDS, should work with
I agree, yeah.
So it's not required.
Okay.
So we cannot add options in gateway that require SDS because it will break everything else. And
So you want to have a general way to specify the trusted CA, either through SDS or through
so
file mount.
for now, values.yaml is the best option, and because it involves mounts. And in the future, it will be operators that will handle this because again, it covers a multi-cluster.
Okay. All right.
And some rotation, by the way, it's also related.
Okay.
Changing.
Yeah, this one I think we already have a tracking bug. I updated that. If you have any questions, I think I'll assign this to me for now. Thanks for Costin for creating this bug. Yeah. So we have 1 minute. Related to SDS work, whether we should drop legacy.
Oh yeah, I
jot.
also raised that.
Is it okay?
So we have the trusted jot and we have the other jot, which implicitly is not trusted. Do we have any legitimate use case to support the not trusted jot and all the complexity in installer everywhere?
Depends on the version of the Kubernetes.
I know, but do we want to tell a user, hey, use the untrusted jot because?
So I think the only use case that a user want to use the untrusted jot is, first of all, it's less complex to set up. So someone could want to try it out, like SDS.
Sorry, what does it mean to be trusted versus untrusted?
Untrusted means that we degrade the security.
Sorry, guys, we're out of time. We gotta boot this to next meeting.
Yep.
Oh, all right. Okay. Thank you.
Untrusted means that it's not an application has access to it and application would